What is up, guys? This is the Sovereign Entrepreneur Podcast. In fact, the inaugural episode. My name is Rob Greer. I'm the co-host. I have my other co-host here, Danny. And we met a month and a half ago at the gym at an Equinox here in LA. And very quickly realized, as Danny described it, we're kindred spirits in many ways. And I'd say that's an accurate summation of our early but nascent relationship. We're aligned on a lot of different things, philosophically, wealth accumulation, where technology is going over the next 5 to 10 years, fitness and biohacking, among other things. And we talk ad nauseum about these things at the gym, so figured we'd create a podcast that kind of captures all these things, with the broader context being, what does it mean to be a sovereign entrepreneur and a sovereign individual, and kind of succeeding in the economy and the world of tomorrow, because things are rapidly changing across various different domains. If I had to sum up Sovereign Entrepreneur in a nutshell, I mean, I've told Danny about these books and the influence they had on my life, but Sovereign Individual, for one, the high level of that is the modern nation state is declining just like the medieval church did, and the power is going to the individuals. We see symptoms of that with COVID, for example, where remote work became ubiquitous and individuals were able to kind of travel around the world and still work at the same time. Another book I would say is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I think a lot of people know that one, and that really opened my eyes to the idea of labor arbitrage. So leveraging labor from across the world. One, it's cheaper, and frankly, those individuals are harder working than those in the United States. And so it's generally a pretty good deal. The third book I would say, it's kind of an offshoot of Tim Ferriss. It's the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Naval Ravikant, I think, is the closest thing to almost a Marcus Aurelius, a modern Marcus Aurelius. He's really into wealth, but at the same time, wealth isn't incompatible with happiness. And like, how do you get both of those things at the same time? And I'd say the last one was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. It's actually Mark Cuban's favorite book, and that's how I discovered it in the first place. But Howard Rourke, the architect, the individualist, is really inspirational for me. So there are various other books, and I'm sure Danny has some as well that he'll cite eventually, but that is Sovereign Entrepreneur in a nutshell. And I want Danny to kind of talk a little bit about himself, and we could kind of take it from there.
Yeah, definitely. Guys, what's up? Like Rob said, let me just tell you how excited I am to be doing this, because, as Rob said, like, I've been thinking about doing something like this for a long time, and, it's been hard just kind of like going off on my own and doing it with, not having another person to really, bounce ideas off of and, kind of like just figure this out with, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, having freedom today is I think what most people are searching for, and there's a variety of different ways freedom will like play into your life, right? Like you said, time, money, health, wealth, all these things. And, like Rob said, we went to, we go to Equinox in LA, and Rob just came up to me one day and started asking questions, and we just hit it off from there. And, I approached him and said, hey, why don't we do this thing together, right? I think it'd be really cool. So super excited to just like start this journey with you and like see where things go. But, I think, we have a lot of things that we have information on or knowledge on, especially on different subjects, but also a lot of commonalities as well. And I think that kind of bringing that together and just providing as much value to the people outside of just us, right? It's like the most selfish thing to do is have all this knowledge and not give it to other people.
Right.
So, I think through this podcast, we're going to be able to deliver that. And again, just trying to create value and a community and bringing people together that, a lot of times in my life, I've felt kind of like alone in my thoughts and actions, and being able to say, hey, there's like this group of people that think the way you think and have similar ideas. And even if we don't, hey, we get to like compare notes and kind of like discuss things, right? And be open to other ideas. So we're going to have a ton of fun with this and just provide like ungodly amounts of value and, just go 1 week at a time. And,
Yeah, look,
see
and
what
like
happens.
we don't presume to know the answers of the universe, but
Correct.
we know a thing or two about fitness. We know a little bit about wealth accumulation, and I think we know a little bit about life. And
Yeah.
I think this is part of the Hormozy model of just selflessly giving value and articulating your thoughts,
Yeah.
and hopefully it benefits people. Maybe it doesn't, but we're still going to talk about it. And it's all about the value per second that we're offering.
Totally.
And if we could compress as much value as we can, I think that's success.
Yeah.
And it's kind of about, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step. And so we're taking that right now.
Yeah, exactly. So super excited to do this.
Yeah. And I think like the good first step here is kind of just introducing you guys to who we are. My previous podcast that I did, the true inaugural one, was the Marxian Sovereign Entrepreneur Manifesto, where I kind of double clicked on what I was saying a little bit earlier. But I think introducing you to the two co-hosts is probably a good place to start. And we'll eventually, we want to do Huberman, Rogan style, Lex Fridman style podcasts where we're having other kind of entrepreneurial killers come into the show here in Danny's beautiful house and just talk about a variety of topics.
Yeah.
I like to ask, I was telling you, my favorite thing to ask is, what was your biggest failure? Where were you at when you were my age at 29 or at Danny's age at 34? And what have you kind of learned over the years as becoming an entrepreneur? And I think we're going to drive a lot of value from that. And at the same time, concurrently, hopefully, we're delivering value for you guys. So I am 29. I grew up in northern New Jersey, in Bergen County specifically, the most densely populated county and the most densely populated state in the United States. And I grew up very much middle class. Dad was an appraiser. Mom still is a teacher. And I don't know how deep I want to get into this stuff, but I went through some shit when I was a kid. And as an adolescent as well, unexpectedly lost my dad when I was 15 years old. And so I am no stranger to suffering, but I think in many ways, I have a tattoo that's yin and yang. I think the darkest moments of my life, in retrospect, are kind of these seminal moments in my life that kind of paved the way for where I am today. And I went to Penn State University. I was even lucky to get into Penn State because frankly in high school I was just smoking weed all day and not studying for my SAT, not studying for my classes. And so at Penn State, the first year was really tough. Like I didn't really know anyone. I didn't align with a lot of people. And ultimately I ended up meeting some guys that were pursuing investment banking and Wall Street. And coming from Penn State versus an Ivy League school, that was no easy chore. So basically I sacrificed most of my sophomore year preparing for these investment banking interviews. I was shuttling back and forth from Happy Valley, Pennsylvania to New York over and over again. Hundreds of calls with people across the Penn State alumni network to break into banking. And ultimately I did. And so I chose to go down the healthcare investment banking route for a variety of reasons. But I ended up spending a year and a half in Manhattan. Those were very tough years. 80, 90 hours a week. And it was pretty soul crushing. I think many people at Wall Street, especially those that climb to the top of the pyramid, I think a lot of them are probably psychopathic and they kind of viewed me as a resource to be exploited. But at the same time, within 3 weeks of graduating from Penn State, I was flying first class with the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I was in boardrooms. I was working on deals that were making it into the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So it was a valuable experience. I think it also kind of teaches you to be robotic within an Excel spreadsheet, within a PowerPoint presentation. And it's one of those things where 2 years of experience working 80 hours a week is comparable to 4 years of experience working 40 hours a week. And it just gives you a really good foundation of business and finance. But from there, I went to private equity, specifically within healthcare, middle market. And there, private equity firm is essentially a company that buys companies. And you kind of flip a house in 3 to 5 years. We flip companies in 3 to 5 years. And there's kind of a lot of different legs of that stool that, maybe in another podcast episode I'll dive into. But I was one step removed from the entrepreneurial process. And really, at the end of the day, I found that endlessly fascinating to, as a private equity investor, put on the investor hat and understand what area of an economy is attractive from an investment standpoint, but then how do you create value once you own a company? How do you generate growth? How do you generate value? And then also at the same time, to be honest, I saw 40-year-olds making 75 million bucks and I was like, maybe I should entertain this path because, you could kind of work in corporate America for 20 years and still not even come close to that. And it really is just a function of your risk tolerance. And so, yeah, ultimately 27 years old, actually 2 years to the date, in June of 2022, I left my job and I decided to start a health supplement company called Avenir Nutrition, while concurrently digital nomading. So I did 25 countries over the course of a year, scaled Avenir from 0 to 7 figures of annualized revenue. I did that in conjunction with 2 physician influencers and just happened to kind of partner with the right horses. They were kind of growing in and of themselves, and their growth fueled the growth of Avenir, and it was kind of just a very virtuous cycle in a pretty tough space, I would say. From there, I moved to LA. That's kind of taking me to the present moment. I have another business that's called SovDoc, essentially productizing what I did in healthcare private equity and applying it to private doctor practices. So this playbook of how do you grow a company, how do you grow a doctor practice? A practice is a company, a patient is a customer. And so it's that, and then also helping doctors explore private equity, because in many cases, doctors really don't speak the language of business. And so it's kind of unlocking that path and opening that door for them. And that's where I am today. I have a lot of places to where I want to go in the next kind of 3 to 5 years. I kind of have a 2030 plan, which I could talk about at another point. But that's kind of me in a nutshell and where I am at this point.
Super interesting just on your background, and there's so many
And you
areas.
didn't even know much about that.
No,
right?
not at all. I mean, like a little bit, but not a ton, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it's funny because we meet in the financial world, right? That's like where the similarity is, but what a lot of people don't understand is the financial services industry is a vast industry that you can do many different things in, right? So obviously I don't have a investment banking background. I have also an institutional background, right? But more on the equity side, right? So like the buy side. So I started my career, my dad was an institutional trader. He co-founded firms, and I got the opportunity to work with him when I was younger, right? And sat on a trading desk at 8 years old and saw just like the mayhem of that.
That's
sick. Talk about like high octane. I mean, you sit on an institutional trading desk, it's wild. And that was even before, obviously due to my age, like I didn't even get to see the 80s, which was the heyday of it all, right?
Drexel Burnham.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's where I started, and I got the opportunity to work for my dad and on the desk and work with him for a number of years through college and a little bit after college. And then obviously for reasons we can go in deeper on a podcast, personal story is, my dad had to leave and the firm kind of wound down, and I found myself wondering, hey, was this what I actually wanted to do with my life, right? And I continued to, be on a trade desk for a few more years, and then decided to leave financial services and be an entrepreneur, right? So I got into the clothing industry and had, a couple small boutique clothing lines with a friend of mine, and did that for a couple years and realized, hey, finance was actually kind of fun. I liked it. But I also at that point wanted to be able to build deeper relationships and have a bigger impact than I did, right? Kind of like you work all the time, you don't really see the impact you're making for a greater good, you just see you making one individual very wealthy.
Yeah.
So from there, I decided to be a financial advisor, right? Get over to the retail side of finance and interact with the retail customer in order to really share information and knowledge with them that would make significant differences in their lives and the lives of their family over time if followed, right? Obviously you have to implement the knowledge.
If followed, yeah.
Right, so I started my career as a financial advisor out here for a smaller RIA owned by a bigger insurance company. And then a few years ago, I transitioned my practice to Fidelity Investments, right? So I've been with Fidelity for a few years and obviously love the company there and working with our clientele and really just helping individuals and their families get to a better space, right? And accumulate wealth, right? Because like it has to do with the sovereign entrepreneur is wealth accumulation creates financial freedom, right? And that's really like what we talk about is kind of the biggest thing, especially nowadays, is how do you get this freedom? It's through wealth, right? Because then you're able to buy back whatever you want, essentially, right? Whether it's time, which is the number one thing. So again, I grew up also like you, Northeasterner. So I was born and raised in Connecticut for until I was about 8, then moved to Western New York, right? A little place called Rochester. Some of you may know it. My dad's from there. My parents went to school there, and I basically grew up in Rochester. And fantastic place to grow up. It's like the suburbs, right? Nice community. You know, you got to be a kid growing up. It was not a big city. You got to run around, ride bikes, play outside all day.
There's green.
Just green and space, right?
Yeah.
So
It's good for the soul.
yeah, and I was able to, you know, I got really into snowboarding, and I decided in college I'm not going to stay around here. A lot of people get stuck in the Northeast when they go to college and grow up there.
Yep.
And that was something I didn't want to do. I kind of always felt this calling to, hey, there's like a bigger, not just country, but a bigger world out there. So let's go experience that and be somewhere where I can still pursue, you know, my interests, right? I was trying to make a career in snowboarding. So I decided to go to University of Colorado in Boulder.
I forgot about that.
CU Boulder, right? Go
brother
Buffs. Which was a fantastic experience. I went to their business school, got a finance degree, right? And again, had the opportunity to kind of go experience something else outside of the Northeast and create connections and relationships that there's a reason I ended up in Los Angeles, right? So many of my friends from school grew up here, moved out here. So after, you know, a few years on Wall Street after school, I was like, I'm done with this. Where can I go? Where I know people? Looks like Southern California, right? And it's like, you come here and you realize it's amazing and you don't want to leave ever.
There's nothing quite like it. I mean, I fell in love with LA during COVID. I was in San Francisco, which is authoritarian lockdown central, right?
Yeah.
And I came down here because a few of my buddies, my current roommate, who's one of my best friends, they were all working in private equity in Manhattan Beach at a software PE firm. And just being down here, just good vibes, man.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are in LA for a reason. It just kind of aligns with a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, you know, and again, we're going to talk more about this on just like the health and wellness side of our lives, and being in a place like Los Angeles caters to that so much, right? It's not like you're not an outlier like you are in so many other places in this country. It's part of life, and so many people that live here, you know, adopt that lifestyle. And again, the weather's great. You can do things outside. Obviously, we have great athletic clubs, beautiful people. But again, the lifestyle is centered around, hey, how do I take care of myself? How do I prolong life? How do I look as good as I can for as long as possible? So all of that is centralized in LA.
It's good business too, right? The intersection of healthcare consumer is Los Angeles. That's the epicenter. And there's a ton of business opportunity that's an offshoot of that. I think for me specifically, I am trying to service clients within the aesthetic space with SovDoc. And so that can mean plastic surgery, med spas getting massive, longevity and wellness, cosmetic dermatology, cosmetic dental. I'm right near Beverly Hills, and some of my current and prospective clients are based there. But yeah, no, I mean, there's so much you said that I think we could have entire conversations around. But one of the things you said was kind of freedom. And my why really just boils down to freedom. Having that capital, having time, and honestly having a little bit of power, like that is what unlocks freedom in your life. And for me, the highest ideal is I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, and where I want. And if you have sufficient capital, I guess like freedom in the financial context would be my passive income exceeds my lifestyle. Even if I inflate my lifestyle, my passive income is more than that. I think you're in a pretty good place.
100%.
And then part of Naval, his stance is you get to that point and then hop off the hedonic treadmill. You don't need that 10,000 square foot house if you already have a 5,000 square foot one. You don't need more. If you're doing that for you, and if that makes you happy, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But if you're doing that for other people, you're a slave to your ego. But like, what is your why? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing, right? Is I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want to do it with,
Yeah.
right? And it's one of those things like I never want to walk in to a dinner and worry about what the bill is. I never want to walk into a store and look at a price tag, right?
Yep.
And obviously that's a why on one level, but also too is like, how do I give my family the opportunities that I was given as well, right? And I think that's kind of that deeper why, because money, the money motivation, like that why only goes so far for me, right? Like sometimes when the going gets tough and it's you know, you're years in and things still aren't working out, or you're just still struggling, like that will disappear for me. But the why of, hey, you have people that depend on you that deserve more, and I have to figure out how to go get it, right?
Yeah. And it's abundance versus scarcity too,
100%.
right? Like it's central to all of that. It's, you know, the economy is not zero sum. The pie is continuing to get larger. Even if you take a big piece, that doesn't mean Danny could have his piece too, right?
Yeah.
And I think the definition of a scarce mindset is, oh, one of my friends is more successful than me, I need to be jealous and envious of him. In fact, that's not the case, right? It's Danny's successful. In many ways, his success is my success, and vice versa. I'm happy when my friends kill it. And yeah, I mean, I guess where I'm at in my life right now is it revolves around this 2030 plan that I was talking about. And so my thesis is we're at the beginning of a new industrial revolution. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that AI is going to be probably akin to like intelligent electricity. It's going to be fused within every aspect of our economy and lives. And it's going to happen whether people like it or not. You can't sweep it under the rug for too long. And I think our view, like we were talking about this yesterday, is that you could have a scarce mindset of, oh, I didn't start a Shopify company in 2010 after the recession, right? When the cost per eyeballs on Facebook were crazy low, where you could start any business and you're going to be successful. You could have that scarce mindset and look back on that with regret. You know, we probably should have bought a few Bitcoin at that point too, right? More than a couple. But where we are now is where we are. And where we are is a technological revolution that's going to make the internet look like a little tiny glitch. And I think it's a very lucrative place to be at the cutting edge of technology with any technological revolution. Look at Henry Ford. Look at anyone there that was at the birthplace of the steam engine, for example. That was the catalyst for the Industrial Revolution. Those that were taking advantage of that technology, which is fundamentally leverage, did phenomenally well. And I think on our end, there's a lot of different ways to play the AI game. My preference is I don't want to start an AI software company because OpenAI with maybe their next model GPT-5 this summer, or maybe GPT-7, is liable to just wipe out your business if you're an AI software company. You're seeing this with some of the updates like Sora, for example, or GPT-4o, which is, you know, the movie Her in a nutshell. I'd rather start a company that's AI enabled. So the back end, getting rid of, like a business at its core is a series of automations. And so AI can help automate your business in a very cheap and efficient fashion. And so that's like really my approach. But I mean, how are you thinking about business? Like, where would you like to be in the next couple of years? Like, what's your 2030 plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you know, just being in the career I'm in and seeing the benefits of entrepreneurship from a client perspective is, hey, this is something that gives you opportunity to do major things and make a true impact, right? And I think that also I'm passionate on the philanthropy side of things. Of if you do extremely well, like it's your obligation to give back in some way, right? And to help others who are less fortunate. Because what I've realized over the years, it was funny when I was younger, I used to look at people who might have been homeless or you know, things that I was volunteering for, and just people that were downtrodden, right? And I would look at them and say something is wrong with them. It's their
With derision.
fault. Right, exactly. And what I've realized is the vast majority of the time is it's not their fault, right? Especially being here in LA, we see it with the homeless population of veterans.
It's out of control.
Right? So we see something that is these people sacrifice their lives for us, and then they come home and they can't integrate into society and no one's helping them, right? And I think it's also, that's another part of my why is like, other people have given everything for us to be able to do things like this, right? To live in the Palisades in a beautiful house, to have a great career, to start companies and make something of ourselves. It's our obligation to give back and help those people as well. So, that's another part of my why. But again, having that impact on the world, I think that's my biggest plan for 2030 is like, can I impact at least 1 million lives by the year 2030?
Right, and like you were talking about this yesterday when we were doing stair climbs in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Philanthropy is the ultimate form of selfishness.
100%.
Right? Like you do it because you help people, but you also feel pretty good in the process. And by the way, how do you get rich? It's creating value at scale.
Yep.
And so Hormozy, for example, Huberman, they're just selflessly providing that information and that value in the form of their specific, unique, specialized knowledge. And as a result, that value flows back to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're kind of trying to do here, but that's
Yep.
the root of any successful business. I could talk about Navalisms all day, every day, but really if you find something at the intersection of what you're passionate about and where there's a good business opportunity and where you have unique specialized knowledge that makes you and your business a one of one, you're unique, then that is the way you kind of get wealthy and happy along the way.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's the good life.
Yeah, totally.
It's every single day. For so much of my life, I'm just gonna be honest, at my core, like my self-worth was my net worth. And that's kind of where I was until I was like 26 or 27 in many ways, kind of just the Wall Street, like let's get rich, let's make money. But then it very quickly evolved into like, I'm just setting these arbitrary goals and I want to be worth X at Y age. And it's just a recipe for unhappiness because ultimately if you're a type A personality like us, you're setting hyper ambitious goals. And if you fall below them, you're kind of setting yourself up for unhappiness when in reality, you're doing phenomenally well, even if you're falling a little bit short. Hormozy has just been incredibly influential in my life, but he's all just about inputs. It's like show up every day, be outcome independent, outcome agnostic. And if you show up every day, that's kind of part of the process. And that's kind of how you get to that place that you want to get to.
Yeah, I think that's so important to what you said, right? Is like showing up every day, right? And like that consistency is what wins, right? And I think especially in this day and age, consistency is something so few people have and are willing to execute on, right? Like it's not the smartest person in the room, it's the person who just doesn't stop, right? Day in and day out and showing up one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, right? And like that's something I have developed over the years, right? Like no one, if we're doing life right, we're always growing and getting better, right?
Right.
And that's something that I strive for is, the book, what is it, Atomic Habits, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
compound effect, right?
Yeah, and just
good
1%
stuff, yeah.
better a day, every day. By the end of the year, you're 37% better, right? Like that's a huge win.
Yeah, the compound effect just isn't just finance. It's
No.
relationships, it's business. If you
Everything.
just get a little bit better every single day, it just morphs into this incredible snowball.
Yeah.
That just leads to successful outcomes.
100%. And that is something that is so important, and just like not quitting, right? Like no matter how many times you get knocked down, if you just don't quit, you'll win. And that's the most important lesson like
that's
anyone could have.
entrepreneurship in a nutshell. It's life in a nutshell. Like, are you going to just try one business, fail, or not have it be as successful as you'd like, and just give up? Like, I feel like that's just a beta mindset. That's the reason why most people don't succeed within the realm of entrepreneurship. But yet another thing we were talking about yesterday, life is just a series of probabilities, right? And if you take your first shot as an entrepreneur and it's a 25% chance, maybe sometimes you hit, a lot of times you don't. But you learn so much along the way. You get skinned, you get bruised, and you get some scars.
Yeah.
But as long as you don't lose your head, that second business, maybe it's 50%, and maybe the third business, it's 75%, and the fourth business, it's a grand slam at 99%. And you were talking about this too, right? Like what you said about, like if I knew 10 years from now, I had a 100% chance of making $100 million, but I knew that 9-year period in between was just hell on earth, would you do it?
100%. Where do I sign?
Yeah.
Right? Where do I sign? And the funny part is when you put in and you stay consistent, the probability of that happening, maybe not 100 million, maybe it's 10 million or 20, or it could be 200 or a billion, right?
That sounds right.
That like there's no guarantee on what that dollar number is, but there is a very high likelihood of success, right? If you just stay consistent. And like Andy Frisella, like Hormozy, right? They all say, and it's so great that these people have had such positive impacts on our lives. Like, I'm diehard on these guys. Andy Frisella, stud. Hormozy, stud, right? And the recipe for success was they just didn't give up one more time. Ed Milet wrote a book,
Six inches from gold, man.
The Power
6
of One
inches from
More,
gold.
right?
Yeah.
One more phone call, one more email, one more text, one more conversation could change your life, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, that's essentially what we're doing here is, hey, we're just gonna have one more conversation with somebody else, and maybe that'll change not only our lives, but somebody else's life. Like, obviously, being candid, right? I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous.
We should talk about this.
Right?
I didn't even think about this.
Yeah.
Sobriety.
Yeah, so that's something else,
with
right?
an asterisk.
Exactly, right? Mine because I have to, other people's because they get to choose that path, right?
Yeah.
But again, like and this is something that Ed Milet shares publicly about how his dad was in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And his dad taught him this lesson of, I'm just going to worry about staying sober one more day, right? And that's a foundation in the program, and that's how I try to live my life, right? Because when I look at it on a 100-year timeline, that becomes daunting and seemingly maybe impossible, right? But if I worry about doing it just one more day at a time, that's all that matters. I win one day at a time,
Yeah,
right?
it's the will to live. You know, it's Viktor Frankl. It's like, how do you get through Auschwitz? You know, one day at a time.
Yeah, one day at a time. And that permeates in every other area of life too, is, okay, I just got to show up today and I'll worry about tomorrow. And if I could show up and get a little bit better today and give 110% effort today, I'm going to win today, right? And if I win enough days, I'm quoting Andy Frisella on this, if I win enough days, I win the week. If I win enough weeks, I win the month. If I win enough months, I win a year. If I win enough years, I win life.
And that's Roger Federer, right?
Totally.
Roger Federer just came out with this insanely good commencement speech at Dartmouth, 4 days ago?
Yeah.
And I mean, he's among, if not the best tennis player of all time. I mean, some people might agree with that or disagree.
Yeah.
But basically his whole thing is he's won something like 80% of the matches he's played in. Elite. But he's only won 54% of the points.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
Man. And it's like, you win a point, you celebrate it, but that point doesn't matter 10 seconds later. The next point is what matters. You lose that point, it doesn't matter. You have to isolate that and remove it from your memory. And I think it's just one of those things with entrepreneurship too, where it's like, you fail, you skin your leg. Do you feel bad about yourself as a result of that? Or is that failure a precondition for your success? Is that delusion a precondition for your success?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's 100% like true and you hear it everywhere, right? All the people that have been wildly successful is you have to be so self-confident, other people look at you as delusional, right? Like, and to me, that's like the beauty of it. I love Dana White because he's great, he says, I love it when you get a bet against me. Tell me I can't do it, right? Because the chip on your shoulder you need, or you should have, not in a negative way, but to channel that and have it be constructive.
A source of motivation.
Right?
Yeah.
And be like,
I'm a bad motherfucker.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do this, right, to show you that you were wrong, essentially, right? Yeah. Just to say, everyone told me I couldn't do this, everyone said it was gonna be impossible. Guess what? I did it.
It's Kobe,
right?
it's Michael Jordan, right?
100%.
It's like if you watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, right?
Best documentary.
Every single game, he found a way. Like, that guy insulted me.
Every game.
Like, I'm gonna make that guy look like a fucking idiot on the court, right?
Yeah.
And it's that kind of mentality that I think it's not required, but it really helps accelerate your success in the entrepreneurship world.
Yeah, and again, sports and business are essentially the same, right?
Yeah.
It's problem solving, it's hard work.
Teamwork, right?
It's teamwork,
Yeah.
right? It's all these things that are the same regardless of what you're doing, whether you're in business or sports. And sports are a great place in life. That's why when you look at Wall Street, they love hiring athletes,
I was
right?
just going to say that. Yeah.
Right? Because again, high octane, high pressure, high stress, fast problem solving. Pain tolerance, huge, right? Willing to put in insane effort day in and day out, right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, well, I was working 80, 90 hours a week. Who is used to that besides an athlete, right? Who was growing up not only going to school, then going to practice for 4 hours after school, like
Or emotional trauma.
that too,
Right,
right?
David Goggins.
That too, you know? So, again, I mean, there's so much value in going back to that like consistency piece, right? And having that be the recipe for success. But what do you think, you know, I want to ask you this too, like how do you think your mindset has changed over the years?
Yeah. I think part of it was like that input output thing where it's just like showing up every single day and enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
Right? It's like so cliche, but like it really is about the journey, and it's the evolution of self. It's who you become as you're kind of searching for those things, and it's who you become as you kind of go through that pain and that suffering. Life is suffering, you know, like that's the core of Buddhism. And it's how you navigate that suffering and how you derive meaning from that suffering that I think separates, you know, someone that is wildly successful, at least in the business domain, versus not. But yeah, look, I think entrepreneurship is about pain tolerance as well. It's, you know, how much have you suffered in your life? How much pain have you been through in your life? Because that unlocks a new threshold of pain tolerance. And entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, man.
Yeah.
There are ups, there are manic ups, and there are depressive downs.
Yeah. So have you had to evolve your mindset of, like, was it always like how Federer spoke on the points, right? Of, hey, you have to be fully immersed and present in this moment, fully focused, have the goal, have the end in mind, execute on it, and as soon as it's over, regardless if it went your way or not, you have to move on. Do you think you always had that in life, or over the years you've evolved into that through reading books, studying successful people that came before you, et cetera?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I mean, there's so many people throughout history that I've derived value from. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, whose birthday I share, Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, right? Who else? I mean, Mehmed with Constantinople, JFK, FDR in many ways, right? I mean, you get polio, and then you become the president of the United States, and you change the course of history, leading the country through World War II to victory. But it's really just, I have this place where I want to be. I'm an ENTJ on a Myers-Briggs basis, and so I effortlessly live my life in the future. And I think part of like my transcendental practice is to force myself into the present, but really most of my life is just thinking about what 2030 is going to look like. What is my life going to look like in 2040? And crystallizing that vision, and then back solving to the present moment. What steps do I need to take today that are going to get there? If I live every single day of my life like this, is that increasing the probability of that vision actually coming to being?
Yeah,
I'd say that's kind of my mindset.
like reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Right? The goal, which is a common thread from all the research and studying and books I've read and podcasts I've listened to, right? That seems to be like the common thread among not just successful entrepreneurs, but successful people in general, right?
Yeah.
And kind of using that like visualization to manifest reality, right?
The law of attraction, Napoleon Hill, right?
Exactly.
Rich, yeah.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, right? Again, like I wasn't always the way I am now, right? People look at me and they say, oh my gosh, you're so disciplined. You're this, you're that, you take care of yourself, right?
We were just talking about that. It's like you take your shirt off and people are like, oh, like, you know, it must be the peptides, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's actually me spending 12 hours a fucking week in the gym.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't really care what you think anyway.
Yeah. You know, it's combining it all together, right? It's, hey, I'm going to spend the time, I'm going to get better in all these different areas, right? I'm going to figure out, hey, what's the best nutrition program that I should be following, right? What's the best supplemental program I should be following, right?
It's finding your own equilibrium.
100%.
Right? It's like so much of my life, I've had people that are like, Rob, like you need to relax sometimes. Like you need to chill out. And the reality is like I've learned enough about myself at this point that when I'm static, I get depressed.
Totally.
When I am not evolving as a person, when I am not improving myself, I get depressed.
Totally.
And so I need action. And so like sometimes that's like perhaps an unhealthy obsession with like getting dopamine hits, right? And just wanting more and more and more. But so far it's worked.
Yeah.
It's worked out.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of people that say sometimes like, oh, when all you do is want more, like that's going to lead you an unfulfilled life. But I think it also helps progress the journey, right? It keeps me from being stagnant, right? Because the second I get comfortable, it's like you're either moving forward and living and growing, or you're stagnant or moving backwards and you're dying, right?
We should talk about biohacking.
Okay.
We should talk about biohacking.
Let's go into some biohacking.
Hell
right?
yeah, dude.
So,
how do you define biohacking?
oh gosh. I mean, I think there's so many different levels of biohacking, right? Like, I think simple biohacking is just knowing how to take care of yourself, right? So somebody that eats processed shit food versus someone that just eats like whole, healthy, whole foods, proteins, veggies, carbs, right? That are just unprocessed, not tons of shit, butter, sauces, all the things. I think that's like level 1 of biohacking.
It's table stakes, dude.
Yeah, right. But that's level 1.
You need to have that foundation.
Everyone should, but the crazy, and we can go into crazy, all the conspiracy theories around,
Bobby
food
Kennedy,
and insurance and all the things.
I don't think
but
it's that conspiratorial. Yeah.
Right. So, the level that I've gotten to has been, kind of research peptides, right? And some of the ones that everyone has been familiarized with, especially now, like you go to the clinics like Next Health or, kind of these like optimization clinics, they do Botox and they do the B12 and the IVs. Like now you can get some peptides there, right? Now they're offering them kind of to the masses.
What's a peptide?
So
what are peptides 101?
Peptides 101. So a peptide is a chain of amino acids, right? That it goes into a cell and tells your cell to do something, right? So there's 1,000 different peptides, and again, I'm no expert, right? I'm not a doctor.
How many hours have you researched?
Probably at least 1,000 at this point, right? So
you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's tons of peptides that do many different things, right? Have many different functions in the body. You have your increased energy, your mitochondrial health, your telomere health, right? Cognition. We have growth hormone, which obviously hits so many things in the body. Yeah. So we have healing, right? Wound healing and cell regeneration.
Yeah.
So,
but it's all organic.
All organic because all of these things are already naturally occurring in your body.
Yeah, you just get a little help.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. You enhance what the body is naturally already doing, right? Like if you cut your skin, over time, your skin will heal and go back together and you'll have new skin cells, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Now, with the help of some peptides, you can expedite that process and take it from maybe 2 weeks to 4 days, right? And that's something that's like an example of doing it. Your cognitive health peptides are helping your brain create new neurological pathways and protecting the sheaths on the neurons, right? To help increase memory recall and stave off dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I did a little bit of Solank and some Max today, actually, right before this conversation.
Yeah.
That stuff hits, man.
Yeah.
It definitely hits.
It's good. I mean, the research been around? And again, where does all the research come from on peptides? Where you guys are from, right? Eastern Bloc, Russia, Ukraine, Croatia, right?
Thank you to my ancestors.
Yeah, they've been experimenting with this stuff and really doing an insane job over decades, right?
It was like 1920s, right?
100%. Yeah, like early, like pre-World War II. And I think that's kind of at like the highest level now. And there's some different treatments that, different doctors are practicing outside the United States where they're kind of combining.
That's some Brian Johnson shit.
Yeah. And they're able to combine basically like peptides with CRISPR technology where they can actually...
Like gene therapy or?
Yeah, they actually are able to input the peptide into your genes.
Oh.
So instead of administering them the way we do nowadays through injections or topically or nasal sprays. It's actually going into your body.
So
on a
is that what
permanent
you were
level.
telling me that one time at the gym, where it's like right now you have to take peptides on a recurring basis, but ultimately you get to the point where you inject it and it becomes part of you. And so you don't have to take it every single day, right? Does that also mean you pass it on to your progeny?
So that's something that nobody knows yet, right?
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, this is kind of like the next frontier. This is like the next level of that technology, and just longevity and like biohacking, right? So there's so many different levels. I've gotten to, I try to practice all these different levels of, hey, here's your foundation of great diet, right? Good exercise, right? Like, what is exercise doing? It's building lean muscle and increasing bone density and getting rid of fat. Like, that's technically biohacking,
Who wouldn't
right?
fucking want that too, right?
I don't get that, right? So that's something.
How bad do you want it? How bad?
And it comes down to consistency and discipline, and like you said, suffering, right? I think the overarching theme on everything we'll be talking about from here on out moving forward comes down to grit and mental toughness.
Yeah.
Right?
My definition of biohacking is optimization.
Totally.
Performance optimization.
Totally.
And for me, it's if I could get a leg up on someone,
Yeah.
then I'll do that. It's all about risk return, right? These things don't have longitudinal studies in many cases. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You're taking a little bit of a risk, but what do you get in return? You get superhuman energy, you get superhuman focus, and energy times focus is your output. Capitalism is Darwinism, right? Let's not lie, it's a competition. And if I could get an edge up on you or my competitor in my business, I'll do that, no questions asked. But overall, you kind of just like, you have more focus, you have more energy, you sleep better, you're happier. And honestly, you just feel a little bit more alpha along the way too. And it's pretty fun.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things like, if there's a way to be better, why wouldn't I invest in that way, right? Like you said, it gives me a leg up on other people in other areas of my life, right? Whether it's health and fitness, cognitive functioning, right? So if I'm smarter than the next guy, or I can do things faster or recall facts and information faster, that's probably going to deliver me more value in the marketplace, right? Because of that. But like you said, at the end of the day, it's like entrepreneurship, right? Like, there is always a risk involved in anything. So you have to be willing to take a chance, right? Take a risk, roll the dice, right? Like, I'm willing to take the risk in order to increase and optimize my health and longevity, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like in business, right? Like, you have to be willing to take a risk in order to get to the next level, right? It's like, okay, I'm here, I've hit a peak, right? I've hit this plateau. In order to level up to the next level, I'm going to have to, at this inflection point, make a decision if I want to take a risk in order to get to here, or not take a risk, stay comfy, and just stay the same, right?
Yeah.
But there's no going like this without taking a chance, right?
Comfort is death, man.
Yeah, 100%, right? Stagnation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting.
What's your
Obviously.
stack? Are you comfortable sharing your stack?
My stack. Well, my stack changes, right?
I hope people
Like,
are ready for this.
my stack changes.
Well, this was the genesis of our friendship, right?
100%.
I went up to you, I was like, dude, what the fuck are you on?
Yeah, 100%. So, full disclosure, never done androgynous steroids, right? Never, like, true when people are like, you're on juice, you're on roids, right? Like, I've never done any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there may come a point where I do. I don't think for me the risk return is worth it because I'm not a competitive fitness model or bodybuilder.
There's going to be better stuff in a couple of years too.
Yeah, so like the stack I love the most is something we've always talked about are the cognitive ones, right? Solank and Samax. There's also another one called Atomax, which is kind of, in cahoots with them.
My buddy was telling me about that one.
Yeah, supposedly it's better, maybe it's not, but so for cognitive, those are the three I use.
Yeah.
To stave off injury and keep me feeling good, BPC 157 combined with TB 500 or TB4, right?
So you're just the fucking chemist.
Yeah. Which is funny because we could go back to my days of, drinking and using before I got sober, and it was the same thing, right? Like, what cocktail can I create to make me feel the best, right? So it's kind of the same thing of where I found what's the best combination to enhance me in the best way possible. So that's like the healing one I use, and then the growth hormones we've talked about, like supplement with MK677/abutamorin, CJC 1295,
IGF, baby.
IGF-1 LR3,
Yeah.
tesamorelin, ipamorelin, and again, we just like
It's just hilarious.
we
even,
just
like,
go
naming
through.
These. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where like my mom hears this, she's gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Well, what's funny too is like, and that's the cool part I think about knowledge, right? Is like I've been able to pass this knowledge on to others, and because these peptides have benefited me personally, they benefit other people too.
Well, me, for example, like I credited
Yeah.
you with like kind of red pilling me on the peptide thing. But
Right.
I mean, we just signed a client recently for SovDoc, which is longevity. And part of the main legs of the longevity stool is peptides,
Yep.
NAD plus intravenous,
Yep.
gene therapy, right?
Yep.
I mean, by the way, we're in the middle of a biotech revolution,
Yep.
and that's going to converge with AI, and it's going to get accelerated by AI.
Yeah.
I mean, we're reaching a point where, I mean, we should talk about longevity a little bit too, right?
To me is like the most important piece of the whole puzzle.
That's going to help you live longer.
Yeah, 100%, right? So if you're trying to biohack, what are you biohacking for? For me, the one most important commodity or resource in the world is time, right? So my mindset around it is, if I can have a higher quality of life for longer, how do I do that, right? Because that'll allow me to accomplish more, make a bigger impact, spend more time with people I love, right? All my like whys, now I get a longer time to exponentially grow that piece of what I'm
Quality
doing.
and quantity
100%.
at the same time.
100%.
Yeah.
Without quality, the quantity doesn't matter, right?
Dude, it's so accurate, right? It's I completely agree. And like, I'm probably gonna get some eyebrows from this, but like, I do not plan to die personally. And like I said, this is part of the AI thesis, right? AI is going to accelerate science, and science is the bedrock of technological progress. And so, you know, ChatGPT 6 or 7, right, coming in 2026, 2027, maybe that is on par with a PhD scientist, a PhD AI researcher. What is that going to do for science? What is that going to do for our understanding of the human body, of our brain? And understanding is a precondition for manipulation. And so you could see this with Neuralink as well. I mean, Elon, we haven't even talked about Elon yet, but I think he's awesome personally. And I think he's doing so much for humanity. But specifically for Neuralink, they literally just cured blindness in monkeys, right? That's an incredible feat. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've seen it. That guy they implanted a chip in. He was paralyzed for some freak reason. And he's able to play chess with his dad now with his fucking brain. It's incredible. But where biohacking comes into play and where transhumanism comes into play, which is basically it's going to help sick people first, but then it's going to help healthy people. And it's going to splinter, I think, the human species in many ways. There's going to be people that are injecting themselves with these nanobots. Well, I mean, you and I were injecting ourselves with peptides, but then what if they're AI connected nanobots that are going to replace the functioning of your organs?
Yeah, give them to me.
Going to put into your bloodstream. I mean, what is that going to do? It's going to stall the aging process.
Yeah.
And it's going to give you superhuman energy.
Yeah.
And once you stall the aging process, it's not a far cry from reversing it, right? And choosing your age at that point. But there's this concept of longevity escape velocity that's really popular in the longevity community. And what LEV means is essentially technology, biotech is adding more than 1 year of your life for every year that you're living, for every year that's expended. And so that enables indefinite lifespans. And so I know I've heard rumblings of people at OpenAI that are convinced that artificial superintelligence, we should talk about AGI, ASI, and singularity, that a singularity is going to happen within the next 10 or 15 years, certainly within our lifetimes. And so there are people they're not skiing anymore. They're not skydiving anymore. They're not going to any risky countries. Just because, like, how tragic would it be to die right before the technological singularity? Like, for something that could produce post-scarcity, abundance, and utopia.
Right.
It's a little bit of a crazy topic, but I think it's something that we should talk about, because if a singularity is happening in our lifetimes, that's a once in a humanity event. And for all we know, that's a once in a universe event.
Right.
An explosion of intelligence. What is a singularity? I mean, that has its roots within physics. And a singularity, I think, is, I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but it's essentially a black hole. You do not know what happens after that point. When you have AI that's self-recursive or improving itself continuously, when you have AI models that are making themselves more intelligent, that could lead to an explosion of intelligence beyond which point we do not understand. And that's going to happen in our lifetimes. And so my base case is, 2030, it's still going to be some kind of, we're going to have 100 years of technological progress in the next 6 years.
Right.
That's going to be profound in and of itself, but we're still going to have something resembling what we have currently from a societal standpoint. But fast forward to 2040, I don't think you could look beyond this point right now. And what is one to do in such a world? What is one to do in a world where humans are economically irrelevant and valueless by 2030? AI is the commoditization of intelligence, right? I pay $15, $20 an hour for really high quality A-level labor in Saudi Arabia or in Argentina or in the Philippines, but the cost of that intelligence, which is fundamentally what it is just in a human body, is going to go towards zero. The cost of energy is going to go towards zero. And so people that have businesses that are AI enabled are going to get very, very rich. It's a thing of, like, my profit margins will go from 40% to 80%. And what does that do for the equity value of my businesses? What does that do for my growth? And I think we're going to go through a period of massive turbulence economically and job dislocations. I think if I'm someone that's working in the workforce right now, I think you should be prepared to lose your job. I think you should be prepared to reinvent yourself, because I think in a world where tech progress is moving this rapidly, the most important skill is adaptability and the ability to reinvent yourself. But ultimately, AI is coming for all of our jobs. And there's going to be kind of an entire new question of, like, meaning in a jobless world. I mean, I was telling you this the other day. I think, kids born today, I mean, they're not going to be driving cars, that's for sure. I mean, I don't even know if your son is going to be driving a car. But I think kids born today are going to look at their parents and be like, you guys work jobs?
Right.
Like, that sucks. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, for all of human history, their physical and eventually cognitive labor is what defined their meaning in their lives and their own existence.
Yeah. So looking at AI, because this is something you're way more into than I am, or at least have done way more research on,
incredible,
right?
Man.
Yeah, and it's cool because, again, I just seeing it, I do believe it's the future, obviously, right? It's hard to not accept that. But kind of looking at from two polarities is, like, there's, again, it's kind of like the optimist and the pessimist, right? So how do you think AI is going to help humanity? And how do you think AI is going to hurt humanity?
Oh man, I love this conversation. I'm glad we're touching on this. But my base case is 2040. It's going to be complete utopia, or it's going to be Orwellian dystopia. I'm not scared about the Terminator threat. That's fucking science fiction.
Right.
I'm not scared about AI as a separate entity. I'm scared about the humans wielding the AI. I'm scared about sociopaths that are head of these centralized organizations that are doing the frontier models. I'm scared about authoritarians like Xi Jinping in China using this to turn it into a surveillance state with AI-enabled cameras and a social credit score, and then a central bank digital currency. I don't know if we want to wade too much into politics, but, like, I think there's one candidate that is obviously libertarian and pro-individualism, and there's one candidate that's not. And I hope the candidate that is in the former category ends up winning out this time. But I think AI benefits our lives in dramatic ways. It's going to have a doctor, a high quality 99th percentile doctor in every single kid's pocket, in every single human's pocket that has an internet connection within the next 3 years. Think about the implications for the healthcare sector. There's going to be an Albert Einstein in every kid's pocket, teaching them how to do things, acting as their own personalized tutor that is trained on themselves, on your son. for example. It's going to revolutionize education.
Yeah.
But it's going to cut both ways too, right? I think the job dislocations are going to be very prominent. If I had to guess, I think the second half of 2025 is when it's going to start getting pretty prominent, because the reality is these models are 5 to 10xing in capability year over year. So what does that mean? It means ChatGPT 4, which we have currently, which was launched in March of 2022, which feels like an eternity ago. March 2023, excuse me. GPT 3.5 came out in November 22, and that's going to go down in the history books as the catalyst for the AI revolution. But in reality, it was 2017 Transformers research that was happening at Google, but that's neither here nor there. But they're going to 10x year over year in capability. It's like Moore's Law on steroids that are happening right now. It's not only what's happening at NVIDIA, which I think is the second most valuable company in the United States in the world right now, but that's the picks and shovels. That's the hardware substrate layer that's paving the way for the quality of these foundation models, because it's used in training and it's used in inference. But they're going to 10x year over year. And so where that gets us by 2030 are models that are 1 million times better than what we have now.
Right.
I can't even fathom a model that is 2x better.
Right.
Imagine something that's 1 million times better. And it's not just the raw intelligence of these things, it's their ability to do things on your behalf. It's the agentic features. And so the rumor is that there's a new model coming out from OpenAI at some point this year.
Right.
It's going to be multimodal, meaning it's not just text to text, it's text to voice, it's text to video, eventually it'll be text to Netflix series, text to science. But then it's also voice, it's all these different features at the same time in one model that is 5 to 10x as smart as GPT-4. But it doesn't end there. These things are capable of operating autonomously. And so they can do things that are economically valuable on your behalf.
Right.
Had the dog in there. It's cute. And so they're agents, they're connected to the software stack of your business and your personal life. And they're going to remove all inconvenience from your life. The computer interface of tomorrow is not going to be you sitting in front of a fucking computer screen.
Right.
It's going to be you talking in real time with this AI. And by the way, that AI is going to know you as well as you know yourself, if not better. It's going to be trained on every single email, every single text, every single website, everything that you want to give access to. It's going to know all of those things. And what does that unlock? It allows you to it'll do things on your behalf. At my company, for example, in the business context, it'll get to a point where I'm an employee, I'm a company of 1 or 2 or 5 people, and hopefully it's a 9 to 10 figure company at that point. Think about the margins on that kind of thing. Eventually it's coming from me. There's going to be an AI CEO. This is kind of feeds into the topic of Sam Altman. He's like, by 2030, there's going to be a $1 billion company run by one person.
Right.
It's going to change the entire economic paradigm. But I mean, yeah, in a dystopian scenario, all of a sudden your thoughts don't become private. If everyone puts Neuralink in their brain, everyone has Google inside of their brain, but the government could all of a sudden, the NSA could see your thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? It's a much different world.
Yeah.
It's a much different world.
Yeah.
But like, where are you at in terms of AI, in terms of your knowledge with it, and how are you trying to kind of upskill yourself?
Yeah, how I'm implementing AI or what I see for it, and like how am I upskilling on it. So I think the major thing upskilling wise is like talking to you and people like you who
Stop, you're making me blush.
Yeah. But again, like I'm a total rookie on it, and it's kind of like trial by error, right? Like I've dove into GPT-4 and I've been like using it to do stuff, but and then just like researching online, like best prompts, like how do you do certain things on it? Like how are you really using it? So it's definitely, again, just learning on the go, I think is the best way. It's like wax on, wax off, right? Like how do you learn something? You just go start doing it and trying.
Yeah.
But it's something that, again, I think is going to be a big part of our future. And I definitely want to leverage more than I currently am able to, whether that's, inside, outside of a business, or, just to, again, like make life better, right? And I think looking at it that 2 ways, how I kind of phrase that question of like, there's a pessimist and an optimist, right? Like there's that pessimist side of like, oh my gosh, my job is being taken by this, and like, what am I gonna do? Versus, hey, you're gonna be able to now use this to your advantage to leverage it to then go have a better job, a more fulfilling life, more freedom.
Yeah, that's
right?
the abundance way of looking at it.
Yeah,
Right? The reality is it's going to happen no matter what,
totally.
whether you want it to happen or not. And so it's a matter of stoicism. It's like I cannot affect my external environment. All I can do is do the best within the system that we have in place currently and where we're going. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be the invention of fire times 100. It's going to impact every single part of our lives, and it's learning how to coexist with it and befriending it. And I think right now people are still like, oh my God, this is really scary. But it's going to become increasingly humanized. We're going to accept these things within our society. And I mean, within 12 to 18 months, it's absolutely heading in that direction. It's going to be her. It's going to be Scarlett Johansson talking to you in your ear, or whoever you want. Dan Bilzerian, you know, Barack Obama, where the fuck. And it's going to be your best friend. And there's already instances of this. I mean, this is some weird shit, but like there was this app, it started with an R, and it was like the AI friend. And very quickly, both males and females were falling in love with these things.
Right.
With the previous generation of the model, not ones that like were talking to you or like ones that have a face.
Right.
I mean, just imagine once these things are embodied within, you know, Elon's Optimus robots, it's going to be like Ex Machina.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to learn to coexist with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to.
Yeah.
They have to.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think so that the old saying, acceptance was the answer to all of my problems, right? Is like, we can either accept this is happening and again, become like an expert at it and implement it into our lives and have it benefit us and the people around us, or you try to stave off what's going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
And then you fall behind. It's again like Darwinism, right? It's like the people that are early, not even early, but people who decide to be adopters and accept reality and the way the future is probably going to look are going to be the ones that are succeeding or having good lives in the future versus the ones who are stubborn and refuse to change and refuse to grow and be different.
At your peril.
Yeah, are gonna have a really tough time in the future.
We're rapidly evolving into a world of modern day feudalism. Like I talk to you about this all the time, and this might be something that's jarring and shocking for some people, but basically, you know, in a world where 95 to 99% of humans are economically valueless, it's going to very quickly turn into French Revolution style wealth inequality. I mean, we already have a lot of wealth inequality right now,
Definitely.
and that's, you know, the whatever it is, the top 6 stocks in the S&P 500 are what, 25 or 30%. It's like the greatest concentration. And by the way, that's going to continue to accelerate and magnify. All of the economic gains are going to accrue to these technology players. And so if you're bearish technology, I'm sorry, like that's not going to be a good investment. The reality is that this AI revolution is going to lead to an economic revolution. And so you could own NVIDIA, you could own a basket of tech stocks, or you could have AI-enabled business equity. But I think being in the United States dollar is probably not a winning value proposition. I mean, that's a whole other conversation in the crypto that we haven't gotten into yet, but we will in another episode. But yeah, basically the economic revolution, just to double click on that, what is economic growth? It is productivity. It is the output of the economy collectively, but then it's also the number of heads in the economy. And so we have a big demographic crisis that's happening across the West right now, and it's happened throughout history. When there is a certain amount of wealth, GDP per capita, there's decadence, and decadence creates laziness. And it's also a thing where like, once you have enough, people are having fewer kids. Like if you rewind to early 20th century, it was economically advantageous to have more kids because they were working in the field with you. Now that's not the case. There's abundance, and females are having fewer kids. Males are, you know, obviously as well. But at the same time, AI is going to magnify productivity in an exponential way. And so like for me, you know, ChatGPT 3.5 came out in November of 22. I became aware of it at that point. And I started to embrace it in my life, in every facet of my life. Any cognitively intensive task that I have to do, I'm at a point with my muscle memory where I'm like, how can I use AI? How can I use AI? I'm on ChatGPT fucking 5 hours a day at this point. My productivity is at least 3x of what it was 2 years ago. I can't even imagine where it's going to be in 2 years. And you use virtual assistants, the Tim Ferriss model of using VA labor, especially ones that are AI enabled, where I'm like, I'm not gonna hire you unless you know how to use ChatGPT. And your entire purpose is to take things off my plate. I mean, that's how you get to the Naval Ravikant state of like, you don't have to work that hard and you can make a lot of money at the same time.
Yeah, super interesting. Like you said, it's definitely where the future is going. And we could go, and we will go in extremely in depth and granular on all these things.
Any parting thoughts from your end?
Oh man, parting thoughts. Well, I think again, like I said earlier, the thing that I'm really passionate about, right, is the self-development and health and wellness, and again, the financial pillar is part of that, right? It all plays into itself, but I think Brad Lee says this on his podcast, but there's three things in order like that make up or complement each other that you're going to have to change in order to grow and get to where you're trying to go. It's mindset, skill set, habits, right? And I think those are the three like main pillars that no matter what we're ever talking about, we'll always be coming back to those things, right? Or they always like impact those pillars in life. And again, like I feel like I'm just scratching the surface when it comes to everything, right? And just growth and development, and looking towards the future of who am I going to get to become along this journey, right? I think is like the ultimate prize.
What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote? Oh man, I have so many. I honestly don't even.
I'm putting you on the spot a little.
Yeah, so you kind of are. So it's a long quote, and I know I'm probably gonna butcher most of it, but Calvin Coolidge has it's about persistence.
I love this.
Right, and so basically, like the end of the quote is like grit, persistence, and determination alone are omnipotent, right? Now, the quote is much longer than that, and in the next episode, we can bring it up, but...
it's like very Teddy Roosevelt, too. It's like man in the arena. At the same
100%.
Time. You're looking it up?
I'm gonna look
I'll give
it
you
up.
my favorite quote along the way.
What's yours?
Too. I mean, I have it tattooed on my left bicep. It's Viktor Frankl, who was Auschwitz.
Yeah, of course.
Meeting. The quote is, what is to give light must endure burning.
That's good.
I've endured a lot of burning in my life, and I think that's what has prepared me to give light. Yeah,
that's 100%, right? It's like, there's another quote from Ed Milet, or at least he quotes it all the time. He says this all the time, is the person you used to be is the reason you're qualified to help another person, right? And I'm sure I didn't even get that right, but it's basically...
No, I get it, yeah.
I like and that proves, relates to exactly what you just said. But to go back to my quote, because again, what we're talking about is consistency and grit and determination, right? Is nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, "Press on," has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. That's my favorite quote.
Let me give you, on that note, before we finish out, I'm going to read off Man of the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt. I look at this. I have this
great.
I have this on my wall. I read it every single night before I go to bed, actually.
Yeah, also phenomenal quote.
Let me see if I could find it. I should be capable of it. Okay. The man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better, The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Yeah, amazing. Fully aligned with that too, right? And it's, like I said, we're still young guys. We've obviously lived a lot of life already. And
you're wise beyond your years.
Yeah, same with you, right? Same with you. And, we have so many different experiences that make us who we are. But again, like, I always want to be in the arena, and like I have those visions of like I am the gladiator in the arena of life.
Yeah.
And like that's where I'm happiest. That's where I'm most fulfilled, is just like going to battle every day and making something of myself, right?
Russell Crowe as Maximus
Yeah.
in Gladiator.
Right? Because if we look back on our ideals, as a gladiator, you fought for your freedom, right? And that's technically what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like
I love that analogy so much.
yeah, you weren't going to fight to survive. You were going to fight in order to be set free, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's the whole point of this podcast too, for me also, is just like, how can we add value and give back to other people, right? And like we talked about, it's like the most selfish, selfless act, right? Like it's selfless in nature because we're helping other people, but the reason we're doing it, like this takes time, this takes money, resources, right?
Yeah.
So the reason we're doing all of this is in order to have an impact on people, right? And that's what's most meaningful to me about all this. And again, if all we did every episode is change one person's life, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is yet another thing we were talking about yesterday. It's like what matters in the end, at the end of your life.
Yeah.
Independent of what we were saying about longevity.
Right. Independent of living
it's
forever.
It's not the amount of money in your bank account, it's the number of people who love you.
Yeah. Who you had a positive impact on, whose lives you changed for the better, right? And I think that's super important, and this is in line with that, right? Of, hey, who knows what happens with this on a monetary level, but we're doing it to give value and make people's lives better. Yeah, well, we'll see. So I think in kind of like wrapping up this inaugural episode, where can people find you, right? How do people find us?
Yeah. So at sovereign.entrepreneur on Instagram. It's a new account I started like a week ago, but we have some posts going out every single day, kind of just like all the quotes, just encapsulating what we just talked about in many ways. And then my Instagram handle is at Robbie Greer, ROBBY_Greer. I can't get a new one, so I just got to roll with it.
Yeah.
How about you, man?
Yeah, so obviously the podcast can be done on that Instagram at sovereign.entrepreneur.
Yeah.
My personal handle is at Dan DeBias, DANN DeBias. We'll put it in the
show notes,
in the video and in the notes, so you guys can follow us. And then like our goal is we're gonna have not only us talking and just kind of elaborating on different subjects that not only interest us but think are valuable to other people, but we're also going to be bringing guests on, right, and doing joint interviews and different subject matter experts on different things that are interesting for us, entrepreneurs, and again, just delivering the most value we can. So,
well, hope you enjoyed the podcast. I genuinely hope you're picking up what we're putting down, but if you're not, you just find another podcast.
That's right. All right, thanks guys. See you next time.